the first binomial is composed by Maya Hertig Randall, is a professor of the constitutional. And now we're supposed to have the... very good, thank you very much for the beautiful little music. Maya Hertig Randall is a professor of constitutional law and human rights and Vice Dean of the Law Faculty of the University of Geneva, Vice President of the Swiss Federal Commission Against Racism, member of the Assembly of the ICRC and President of the ICRC's Recruitment and Compensation Commission, member of the ICRC's Data Protection Commission. Please be welcome on stage. Mirjam Straub-Bissang is a country head of BlackRock Switzerland and a senior advisor to BlackRock Sustainable Investing since 2018. Prior to BlackRock, Mirjam was the CEO and co-founder of Independent Capital Group AG, an investment management firm focusing on sustainable investing based in Zurich. Mirjam holds a PhD in law, from the University of Zurich, and an MBA from INSEAD. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, very good. Be the welcome. Great applause. Come on. So feel home, you know, you can stand or sit, just feel. So we're going to start with just like a friendly talk and a thing, you know, like, and let's see. So the first question, so we have 20 minutes, right? No pressure. So how do you recognize yourself in this definition, representativeness and social impacts?
I'm not sure the mic is on, isn't it? Yeah.
It is.
I think for me as a constitutional lawyer, the two are very obviously linked. I mean, if you just think of democracy, government for the people, you need government by the people. But who are the people? That has always been very contested. And I think just that input and output are connected. We also have interesting empirical studies. For example, talking about women, a study on quota systems in India. So I'm taking you on a journey with me. Showing that basically once you have, it was a quota system reserving 1/3 of seats to women in village councils. And it had tangible effects. Women would participate much more. They would not feel afraid to speak up. And the policy choices were more responsive to women's needs. For example, there was more investment in sanitation, in school, in health issues. So I think clearly the impact, representativeness is linked to impact. And it's also, from my point of view, we are all partial in our vision of the world. We're influenced by how we grew up, who we represent. And I can maybe just add another example. At the university, I run a clinical teaching program, which mainly works or explores issues of people in vulnerable situations. And for example, when we did research and trying to find tangible answers to questions people had, you work with homeless people. They will ask you, can I wash in a fountain? Can I use soap? Not soap. Can I sleep in a car? And it's clear if we hadn't worked with them and listened to them, it would have never occurred to us to come up with such issues. So that's maybe my first thoughts on this topic.
Mirjam? I think it's on.
Oh. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks a lot, and thanks for inviting me and being here. It's really a great pleasure and honor. Well, on representativeness, I always think about the representation of women, and here, you know, I speak for business. I can't really speak for academia, but in business, I think it's particularly important to see these women in leadership roles and to see how women can actually contribute on having a meaningful impact in companies, but also in societies. But especially in business, this has been a fairly short journey, I would say, in Switzerland. And I think in a very relatively short time, we've come a long way, and we see a lot of women today. And I think events like that are important. But in gender diversity, you know, as some smart professor once said, or probably that's what people in gender diversity studies always say, I mean, you would know that better, is seeing is believing. So we need to see these women. We need to see these women in leadership positions, because only if we see these women, then it becomes a goal for other women, for younger women. And I think just by, you know, being one of them, I think that's an important impact and a lot of inspiration for other women to follow.
Absolutely. The same thing is happening in the movie business. You know, we have more and more directors, producers, women that are, you know, taking a very important place in the movie industry, and it's really something wonderful. So, according to the latest Forbes ranking, of the 500 listed CEOs of the larger companies, only, well, that's what we've been talking about, only 7% are women. Another topical observation, out of more than 900 Nobel Prizes awarded since 1901, only 54 have been awarded to women. So how do you react to those observations? Maybe you, Maya?
Well, whenever I hear these figures, I still find it quite depressing, to be honest. But I think it also shows that it's a structural issue, and we have a long history, and you know, representations of gender roles, etc., which are hard to change. But and it takes a lot of time. We would all like to.
But it's changing, right? I mean, that's what we just realizing that it's really changing now. Don't you feel that?
I think it is changing. I mean, if I think of myself, just when I studied law, I didn't have a single female professor, you know, but we're not there yet. It is changing, but we have to obviously continuously working for it.
Actually, ahead of this conversation tonight, you know, we were given a couple of questions, and I looked up the figures of students in natural sciences. I have two daughters and a son, and one daughter now has to decide which way to go, and science doesn't seem to be the preferred choice, but that is the problem. You know, Nobel Prize, most of the Nobel Prize, I think, except for peace and literature, are in natural sciences. And now I looked up, I think is it in the ETH, you have about only 1/3 of women studying in natural sciences, but you have 2/3 of women studying in human sciences, like you know, literature and all these things. So it's just hard. It's just the plain numbers. If you don't have numbers, if you don't have women studying science, you're not going to have female Nobel Prize winners. And I think in business is similar, but it's going just a lot faster. And you know, I see the difference. For example, the situation here that we face in Switzerland, in Swiss companies, compared to international companies, American companies. Now I work in an American company. I'm very often in meetings with senior people, and they're only women. First time, I thought, where are the men? I was not used to that. And today, when I work with Swiss clients, they're still on the other side of the table. They're only men. So it's happening faster in other places of the world, but I think that has to do with
slower in other places of the world
and
also.
And even slower in other places.
Even slower in other places in the world. Yes. Positive representativeness, the process must be initiated at the grassroots level. Issues related to culture, education programs, extended responsibility in relation to the salary recognition program. Does it tell you anything?
Well, I think to bring about change, it's a very complex issue, and you need different strategies, and they obviously have to come bottom up as well. I think it starts already in the family. What is the role models you have at home? How have you been brought up? It continues in school. What are the role models you have? What is taught in school? And also at the university, I thought it was quite interesting. About a couple of years back, law students wrote to us saying, look, we have an issue with, for example, the way some exercises are set up, because you do divorce law, it's always Mrs. who stays home and she wants alimony and so on, and very stereotypical representations. So I try to make a conscious effort to make sure, you know, it's not the woman who is always at home. And diversity, I think that's another complexity. It's not just gender, obviously. You have other diversity as well, and to bring about this change is complex. And I think we all have biases. That's the other important factor. We're not free from them. And to always try and at least be somehow aware of them.
Yeah, I think it has to do with continuous training and just trying to be very, very aware. And as you said correctly, it's not just about gender diversity, it's really about diversity more generally.
But don't you feel that a new generation, like my daughters, I have like 3 daughters, okay? I have a stepdaughter. She's like the first one, I guess I had. I had her when she was 4. But she's I'm considering her like my daughter. And I have like one who's 22 and the other one who's 18. And God, they're really, really strong-minded on those issues. They're very, very. They don't joke about it. They're very. I mean, it feels like that the new generations are very much aware, much more aware of certain topics, much more than my generation, for sure. What do you think about that? About the new generations? Do you think they're more aware? They're more. Women are more.
Well, my children are probably a bit younger. I don't think they think in gender differences just yet. I mean, at least the girls have a tremendous sense of entitlement, So I also have a boy, so poor guy, really.
Yeah, I have a boy too.
But I would say in the younger generation, and currently, my current job, I work a lot with younger women. The average age at BlackRock in Switzerland is like 32, so I could be their mother for most of them. And they also have a very strong sense of entitlement. Nobody would accept to be paid lower than. I mean, they all have full transparency over what everybody makes. I mean, they talk about it all the time. So I mean, there is nobody would take a step back. And I remember, when I had my first job after an MBA, I was hired a decent salary. And a year later, a guy was hired from exactly the same business school, and he got 10% more. And I thought, okay, why? And it kind of bothered me.
So how do you feel when you that's?
No,
it bothered
me. It bothered me, but then I thought, well, poor guy, he's married and already has a kid, so I probably needs more money. It's okay.
Okay, yeah, very generous.
But the current generation would not accept that.
Yeah.
Never.
I also get the impression that young people, certainly with the broader diversity, are much more at ease, and they are sensitized also to issues, for example, LGBTIQ, etc., which I think wasn't that much of a topic when I grew up. But I think I still make the experience, I find that women sometimes are less self-confident than men in hiring processes, etc. I've also, with some women, sometimes realized that they don't see so much the problem, and they discover it once they have children, or once they are once they work, or once they say, well, I had children, I thought we'll all share equally, and it doesn't work the way they thought. So I think it still probably depends, I think. And then also, obviously, I can see my world, which is more the academic world, etc. Maybe to end up with an anecdote about children, because I have 2 children as well. My daughter was 8 years old when Donald Trump got elected, and she wrote a letter to him saying how outraged she was and expected me to take it to the White House. Wow. So she moved on, and she corrects her grammar tests now, thinking it's unfair that the conjugaison is always il. So she thinks it has to be very, like I get comments by the teachers. So, well, she's 12 now.
Wow. Let's go to that. Well, that way, well, Switzerland. Is Switzerland like a very good example when you see the federal council? We have 4 women versus 3 men. Is that right? Is that a good sign? Is it something like that? When you see this, you think?
Well, I think it's what you would expect. I mean, 3 men, 4 women, 3 men. No, what is 4 women?
4 women and 3 men.
No, 4 women, 3 men. 4 men, 3 women. I think it doesn't mean much. But then again, when you think back, 50 years ago, there were no women. Women could not get elected, and they could not vote. So I always think, we've come a long way. And when you compare it to other countries, really,
France. For example?
France was it 50 years earlier that they had the right to vote? I mean,
I think
like
it was the
staggering.
70s, 60s, I don't know.
No,
I
no,
don't
no, no.
remember the
70s
date.
was Switzerland. Switzerland was super late.
No,
I think
but
it's like
in France
I
was
could look
late.
it up.
Yeah. No, it was
But
something
we
else.
were super late, so I mean, 50
Yeah.
years. I think we've come a long way. But
No, but I'm saying that I don't think the French are. I mean, we'll see that, but I don't think they're 100% ready to have like a woman president.
probably depends what woman. No, but I mean, when you look at France, there's so many women in top leadership positions because there is no social stigma for a woman to work and have a career. You put your child into childcare. Well, if you do that in Switzerland, you take your child and give him or her away after 3 months maternity leave or 6 months maternity leave. I think it probably starts with the husband, goes on to the mother-in-law, maybe your own mother who tells you, how can you do that? So I think there's a lot of social stigma here that
Totally.
we, probably in other countries, we don't see as much. And so I would say there's a lot of almost accidental careers you would see in these very progressive countries.
Yeah.
And maybe about the government, okay, that's just one sphere of, the whole life, be it political, etc. If you look at the Council of States, it's 28%. And I think it's always, once you reach a certain number, there's also the risk that you just say, oh, we've done it now. And you can also see it in academia sometimes that you say, well, we have a certain representation and all of a sudden you have a backlash or you go back. So nothing is ever, you never achieve anything for good. You always have to keep, I think, working for it.
Yeah. So we have like 5 minutes left. And do you have a question to ask from Maya to Mirjam or Mirjam to Maya? Who's starting?
Maya, please start, because I have to look up the question again, because I had two.
Well, Miriam.
Find the right one.
I think you're a very inspiring role model for many young women, and I can imagine that you get asked the question, well, how did you get where you are today? And what answer do you give them? Or more generally, what advice would you give them?
Very good question.
It's actually a good
Hard
question.
one, I know.
Yeah, it's a hard one, but I think I was in the very privileged situation that when I grew up, I had a woman who was extremely had a mother who was extremely progressive for her time, and she was an entrepreneur and very independent in her thinking. She ran a business, and I also had that sense of entitlement that I see in the young generation today. I mean, obviously not as pronounced as it is today, because I wouldn't expect equal pay. But so I never thought I could achieve less than any man. And so when I was growing up, I was sure. I remember I said to my teacher, I think when I was 10, and we had like those first women kind of going for the Federal Council, this Lilian Uchtenhagen, some of you might remember. I said to my teacher, I'm going to be a Federal Council. Not that I ever would want to be that today, but I think I was ambitious, and then you kind of go through life and ups and downs, and but generally, I think it was leaning in, and when an opportunity was there, I just took it, and I think that's the attitude until today. If something great comes or looks great, you kind of go for it.
And what's your question?
My question to you, Maya, which I prepared first a number of questions, but I think that one would be important. In your past, and when you grew up and went through your career, which is exceptional, who were your role models?
I think the two questions we asked each other are connected, because when you think of role models, often famous people come to mind. But when I'm very honest, that's not the people who marked me the most. And I think it was my family. You mentioned your mother. And in my case, it started with my grandmother. My grandmother was born in former Czechoslovakia, 1920. And she was a very bright student and wanted to go on to secondary school. And her parents said, no, there's no need, you can play the piano, learn how to cook, that's it. And so she asked her teacher, you needed a recommendation, and the teacher said, well, I'm not giving a recommendation for secondary schools to women. So the only option my grandmother had was to sign up for an entry exam for the gymnasium, which she did, and she passed. And basically, she was someone who was very also courageous. resilient, and who would just do her path. I mean, she could never study. Czechoslovakia was invaded. It was World War II. Then was communism, which was also a very hard time to cope with. And I think she also handed down a lot of our family history. For example, my grandfather, who was the first lawyer in our family, but he could never practice. He didn't want to practice under communism. I think which in my case gave me this idea human rights are really something important. And I could be a lawyer. He couldn't. I could. And then came my mother along, and she gave me, I think, a lot of. She was always working as well, and showed very in concrete ways you can work, you can have a family. She didn't have these stereotypes. You should stay home, and the feeling you're a bad mother. I lived that I can have a great mother, even if she works, etc. So I think that was, and she was very much aware of. She is actually an Indologist by training, so she, I think, opened the eyes also for travel, for diversity beyond gender, interest in different cultures.
I think that's so interesting. Actually, another little add-on I want to give when people ask me what advice to give. And I think, especially in Switzerland, it has a lot to do with the men as well. So it's so great we see all these men here tonight. But I think if you have the choice, I mean, you know, for young women who have the choice, I think they should take a very close look at the guy they marry or have children with, because you know, the women I see today who have had the opportunity to make a career, they always have a guy, a husband who supports that career and lets them have that career. I was very lucky to have a husband who supports my career, but I see how women struggle, you know, and it's not just the mother-in-law and the mother, but it's also the husband who says, what are you doing? You have to stay home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well done. Well, we did our 20 minutes. Thank you very much. That was a wonderful conclusion. So thank you very much. Careful when you